Hi kindergarten, it's Mrs. McKee, and I'm going to read you guys a story today. This story is called Oliver Jeffers wrote this book, and it's called The Moose Belongs to Me. Now this is one of my favorite books. I think we read it in kindergarten at the start of the year, but I figured it'd be a great book to read again. So, let's start. This moose belongs to me. Wilfred owned a moose. He hadn't always owned a moose. The moose came to him a while ago, and he just knew that it was meant to be his. He thought he would call him Marcel. He began following Marcel, explaining the rules of how to be a good pet. Much of the time, he seemed as though the moose wasn't listening, but Wilfred knew he was, mostly because he followed rule number 4 very well. Not making too much noise while Wilfred plays with his record collection. Whew. Sometimes the moose wasn't a very good pet. He generally ignored rule number 7, going whichever way Wilfred wants to go. The moose had a very good sense of direction, and Wilfred did not. And not because the moose was particularly poor on rule number 7, section B, maintaining a certain proximity to home. Wilfred quickly learned things to bring some string along their outings so he could find his way back again. Sometimes the moose was an excellent pet. He had no trouble with rule number 11, providing shelter from the rain. Or rule number 16, knocking down things that are out of Wilfred's reach. Oof, I think I need a pet moose for some things. One day, Wilfred discussed their plans for the coming year on a particularly long walk. He made a terrible discovery. What do you think it is? Someone else thought they owned Wilfred, or Marcel the moose. Wilfred was dumbstruck. This moose was Marcel, not Rodrigo. The old lady was mistaken. Wilfred thought it only proper that he correct her. This moose belongs to me. No, this moose is Rodrigo. Uh-oh. And to prove it, he called Marcel. Marcel, heel. But the moose did not respond. He seemed more interested in the old lady. That's the old lady feeding who she thinks Rodrigo. She's feeding him an apple. Embarrassed and enraged, Wilfred rushed off to home. But in his haste, and miles from anywhere, he tripped over his string and got tangled up. And there he lay. Wilfred was beginning to get a little bit worried. It was past home time now, and the monsters would be out soon. He had just ruled out the last of his options. Uh-oh. So he's got a bear coming, penguin, saw, a hammer, some thunder. So he's pretty much scratched out everything on his list. When along came Marcel and performed Rule 73 brilliantly, rescuing your owner from terrible situations. Look at that. He's rescuing Wilfred. All was forgiven, and perhaps Wilfred admitted he'd never really owned the moose anyway. It would be pretty cool to own one, though. With that in mind, he and the moose reached a compromise. The moose would agree to all of Wilfred's rules. Whenever it suited him. Dominique, you're back and you brought me an apple. Uh-oh, somebody else thinks they own Marcel. So his names were Marcel, an old lady thought he was named Rodrigo, and this man thinks he's Dominique. What would you name your guys' pet moose? I think having a pet moose would be very cool. And I would name mine Molly the Moose. What would you name yours, kindergarten? I would love to hear if you want to drop it below. Talk to you later.